Say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. God is great. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. God is great. Allahu Akbar. God is great. Allahu Akbar. God is great.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Dear brothers and sisters, this is your host, Gabe Al-Romani. And mashallah, another day, another episode, a beautiful topic. If you're just joining us, please go back and view the previous episodes about the ideal Muslim family. And we started with the ideal Muslim husband. Brothers and sisters, especially the brothers, please take your pens and papers, take notes, inshallah. We are joined today, as always, by our dear respected brothers, Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Saifuddin, Sheikh Asim Al-Hakim, and Sheikh Salim Al-Amri. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
We're talking about ourselves, inshallah. We're all husbands, alhamdulillah. And we're talking about our dear brothers who are watching us, future husbands to be, inshallah, existing husbands. And we've talked about some of the main characteristics of the Muslim husband. Of course, after saying that the Prophet ﷺ is the epitome of the Muslim husband. He embodies all the perfect characteristics of the Muslim husbands. And we talked about Iman. And we said how this is the most important characteristic. I mean, it cannot be other than that. It's impossible. We talked a little bit about compatibility, which is very, very important. And I want to start this episode with a question that kind of links to a discussion that we've had about over-expectations. And I think this will lead us into another character or trait. So the question is, a lot of sisters, when they look for a Muslim husband, they say now, he should be a da'i, or someone whose commitment to Islam is very high. But when they mean by that, it's not necessarily, okay, he prays. We said, this is very important. He prays. He has good sound iman and good character. But the sisters go a step more. They want, the da'i. He should be a person of da'wah. Is this a character of an ideal Muslim husband? Should the ideal Muslim husband be a da'i? You can start with Shaykh Hassan.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah, wa alihi wa sahbihi wa ihtada bihudahu wa amma ba'd. This is something that is sought after, but it is not realistic. See, it's a demand and supply. And if a sister aims and targets such a position, she herself must be equivalent or more. So we face this all the time when a sister comes or when a brother comes and says that I'm looking for a shooter for my daughter,
right,
or I'm looking for a girl for my son. Now, you have to be realistic. So if a sister says, I want to have a da'i, okay, what about your religious commitment? Are you also active in da'wah? She says, no, I need him to pull me up. Well, a da'i would not choose one like you, with all due respect. He would choose someone that, yes, that would fulfill him, that would help him. I know a lot of brothers in da'wah field, when they look for a second or a third or a fourth wife, they do not care how beautiful she is. The main objective of this brother is she has to be a student of knowledge. Why? He says, I need her to educate me more and help me in my lectures, in my researches, and so on. Likewise, when a brother says, I need to marry a girl that is Miss Universe, you have to be Mr. Olympia in order to choose such a level. So one has to be actually realistic. It's nice to have high aspirations. It's excellent. But come on, you have to reach the ground and walk on it rather than flying in thin air and hoping for something that may not materialize.
No, Sheikh Salim, and you?
Yeah, the sister who's asking that to marry a da'i, he's miskina. He doesn't know. Because the da'i, his time is not his.
SubhanAllah.
Okay?
This is a very good point, yeah.
His time is the time of the Muslims. His phone is most of the time ringing. People are asking him. He is traveling. He is this. He is this. So what are you looking
And then
for?
the end she complains,
Okay?
like, oh,
And
where
then
are you? You're never
give me
here.
time. So may Allah reward our wives.
SubhanAllah.
Okay? They are sacrificing, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them immensely for that. So this sister, they need to
understand that
to
if you want
understand
to
the
die,
reality.
do you know the package that comes with it? You
Yeah,
know, with
exactly,
the die.
yeah.
There's a lot of
Are you
package.
ready to sacrifice?
What do you think that brought sisters to this, I want to die type of mentality? Is there a reason you think? Sheikh?
I'd like to look at this matter from a different perspective, which is a da'i may not necessarily look always for a da'i women, but rather looks for someone who can help and support his purpose. And the reason is he may have someone who can understand and appreciate what he does. And in fact, she would be, inshallah, sharing the reward for what he's doing, even if she doesn't do the da'wah as he does. One thing is regarding the expectation, if I may add, regarding the expectation from a husband. I remember that many years back when I was in Australia, I had a tour of some Australian universities. And then the discussion was really about marriage, because the organizers of this tour said that we do have so many girls, Muslim girls, who are interested in study and they're not really interested in marrying. And they're really confused about what to do and how to choose a husband and so on and so forth. What I found from this tour, and I learned from this, is that most of the time, particularly for students who are at the university level or higher, would have real high expectations of the husband. They still look for this ideal husband who may not exist, who's somewhere in this world. And how would you find somebody who's really matching you in everything, having the same interests, maybe the same hobbies, maybe the same level of education and so on and so forth? You have to be realistic and look at someone who would understand you, would be willing to sacrifice even what, you may not having everything that you expect in a husband. Although a husband is supposed to be preparing himself to be a one with greater qualities in order to lead the family, in order to teach the women. Although the roles may be reversed at times, where a wife would take the role of educating the husband. I know cases where great women were playing the role of the husband in terms of teaching the man, the husband, bringing his level of iman higher. The point is, let's work together towards the same aim, and obviously we expect the man to do that role. However, if he fails for any reason to do so, then the women should stand up for that role to play it.
This is similar to the story of Sa'id al-Musayyib.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I was just thinking
everybody's
about
looking now, okay, let's get me my contact numbers. Can we find someone like this? This is idealistic. But when you come to the original quest for perfection, why is a woman looking for a da'i? Simply because this is the benchmark, supposedly. What does Allah say, subhanahu wa ta'ala? وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَى. There's no one better in rhetoric than a person who calls to Allah. However, this is not a profession like Sheikh Ahmed said. And this is a great misconception. This is not the time to discuss it. But we travel a lot. And the most frequent question that people ask is, Sheikh, how can I be famous like you?
Allah Akbar.
So you are in the wrong track.
Allah Akbar.
If this is your intention, then you are going straight to hell. You shouldn't seek fame. You should not want to be well known, because this means that you're not doing it for the sake of Allah. You should seek knowledge, not to be a scholar, but rather to please Allah Azza wa Jal. This comes as a byproduct that, okay, then you will become a da'i. And likewise, being a da'i is not like someone who appears on TV screens, travels in conferences. No, a da'i could be an engineer in his factory, it can be a doctor, can be a teacher, can be any person.
And subhanAllah, if I might add, that majority of da'is are not even in front of the camera. SubhanAllah, maybe I'm wrong, but from what I know, are the people, working behind. Alhamdulillah, Allah opened these ways, but a lot of the people are working behind the scenes, mashallah, and they are also du'at.
Definitely, yes, it's a collective collaboration between all parties. For instance, I was in Kuala Lumpur last week, and I was telling the volunteers, imagine that you are the great da'is, because the person who drove me from the airport to the convention, without him, I would not be able to produce my lecture. And likewise, those who strive in the cause of Allah, they are da'is. So the sisters should be realistic. Not that I want this TV figure, that I want this celebrity. I want someone who works for the deen, whether on the internet, whether in publications, whether in a masjid imam or helping others to recite, whether in relief operations,
Whatever it is.
way that he could get people and get himself closer to Allah.
MashaAllah. Jazakumullah khair. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. We are talking about the ideal Muslim husband. And just before the break, we were talking about whether being a da'i is a characteristic or requirement for the ideal Muslim husband. And I believe the consensus is that no, not necessarily. But it can be a byproduct later on, something that people should aspire towards. But it shouldn't be a superstar type of figure. It should be someone who sincerely works for the sake of Allah, be it in any kind of job that is, that the niyyah is there, you're doing for the sake of Allah, support work, and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, will accept it and will get the same reward as the people who are in front of the camera, inshallah. Any more comments on this?
There's something they call it the da'wah by the character.
No.
You are not talking. But people are watching your manners, they admire. They like what you are doing. So you are the da'i, though you are not talking.
Allah Akbar.
And that's what the early Muslims were like that. Yes. So the character, and Ummuna Aisha said, كان خلقه القرآن.
No.
Okay? His character was the Quran. And I remember a story I read, a child in the classroom was crying. So his teacher came to him and he hugged him. Why are you crying? He said, because I love you.
Allah.
He said, I love you too. He said, but you're going to hell
Subhanallah.
because you're not wearing hijab. That was da'wah, and the message went straight to her heart from that little innocent soul.
Subhanallah.
See, a child is a da'i.
Allah Akbar.
So the da'wah is not limited to those who appear on TV or PhD holders. No. It's the wrong idea.
MashaAllah.
And I think that's what we need to emphasize, is that you can do many things in da'wah based on your knowledge and ability. Anything, because the Prophet ﷺ said, بَلِّغُ عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Deliver from me even one ayah. Conveying the message is important, and trying to help people be better Muslims wherever they may be, or even calling non-Muslims to Islam, giving them the example. And that's why an ideal husband has to be exemplary, has to conduct himself very well, first towards the wife, and then towards the children, and towards the parents. Because I can see that sometimes if we fail to be good Muslims, then others would be seeing, particularly if we're supposed to look Islamic in our attire, in our conduct. Maybe we, mashallah, get ourselves involved in dhikr and go to the masjid regularly and so on and so forth, so people can classify us, mashallah, good Muslims. But then if we fail to be the real example, then we do a disservice to our deen, and we give people a terrible image of true Islam. Because if you are committed from within, obviously this will show up. And I can see that people sometimes try to justify their wrongdoings. And they say, well, I came from a family, a broken family. I came from parents did not take care of me. So here I am with all my faults, with all my shortcomings and so on and so forth. They're not willing to educate themselves and to discipline themselves. One has to be serious in this regard and to take the responsibility of being a good father. Your children would give you a hard time. Your wife may give you a hard time. And I think there's always this time of adjustment, particularly in the early months of marriage, that people don't get along very well because they come from different backgrounds, they may have different personalities and so on and so forth. It takes time to adjust for one towards the other. You need to have the patience on both sides. That's why divorce mostly takes time in the early period
stage
of the marriage, not later on.
Right.
Because once they get along and you've passed the first, second year, mashallah, safely and nicely, we assume that this will have, mashallah, lasting or
without any injuries.
continuous good relationship.
Yeah.
But that's the challenge, because when you adjust, that needs patience, but at the same time, I remember the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, رَحِمَ اللَّهُ إِمْرَأً قَامَ مِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَأَيْقَظَ أَهْلَهُ. The Prophet is making dua for a man with mercy. If he wakes up in the middle of the night and wakes up his wife to pray, that's a voluntary prayer. And even if she doesn't wake up, he would sprinkle some water in order for her to refresh and get ready to do the same. And it's the same thing for women. If she does the same thing to help her husband become, mashallah, a night praying person. That's why the responsibility is shared. But let's have the man lead this endeavor. Let him be the one to be followed and takes up the responsibility, discipline himself, and try to be the example for his wife and the rest of the family.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. You touched a little bit about children. I believe this is important to make the point here that the ideal Muslim husband is a good father. Sheikh Salim, how would you comment on that?
Yes, he has to be a good father. And Sheikh Jazakallah Khair mentioned that out of rahmah, out of mercy, he woke her up. Because he loves her.
Subhanallah.
See, now let us elaborate on this one. If you love your wife, you will love for her what you love for yourself.
Sahih.
You want her to be with you in Jannah. And so he got up to pray tahajjud. So he wants her also to share the same khair. Because this is the rahmah. You have this merciful feeling towards your partner. This gentleness, the rifq. The rifq is very, very noble quality for the ideal husband. The rifq. The Prophet ﷺ is helping his own family. As in Bukhari. The softness. This is very important. Okay. So helping them in the daily chores. Because maybe he is tired. What's wrong if you are doing the cleaning, if you are doing the washing, if you are doing the hoovering, if you are... Okay? The Salaf, they used to say a man, when he is at home, he should behave like a child, right? Like a child. Not like a general. See? That doesn't affect your manhood. See?
Problem is we're tough at home.
That reminds me of the Prophet ﷺ when he was making himself as a horse. And Hassan and Hussein were riding. And he said when he was seen, the commentary came, نِعْمَ الْحِصَانُ حِصَانُكُمَا, and the Prophet ﷺ said, وَنِعْمَ الْفَارِسَانِ هُمَا. He said, what a best horse you had. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, and even the two best horsemen or riders. This is the point, because the Prophet ﷺ acted, as Sheikh Salim, mashallah, pointed, that he was very easy with the family. He doesn't become like, okay, I am the master here and I should be obeyed and no one should talk back to me. And then even when the Prophet ﷺ saw Al-Hasan, Al-Hussein coming, he kissed him. And then the man there in the company said, well, I have 10 children that I never kissed any of them. He said, وَمَاذَا أَفْعَلُ بِكَ إِن نَزَعَ اللَّهُ الرَّحْمَةَ مِنْ قَلْبِكَ. What should I do for you if Allah has taken rahmah or mercy out of your heart? See, this compassion is what brings the family together. A husband is someone who's very compassionate, very loving, very caring. And the children would sense that, and then they would observe it, and they would pass it along to the next generation. They would pass it along to others. So a settled family, a family with compassion and care and love and this quietness and tranquility and peace of mind and heart and peace within the family, this will translate into peace within the whole society.
No.
And that's why we need to send these messages. These messages may not be spoken, but they are expressed in behavior.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So I've tried to collect some of the characteristics if you want to review, inshallah. We've talked about iman, again. We've talked about rifq or softness, right? We've talked about patience. We talked about usefulness and being of service, right? As we said, not just someone who waits to be served, but someone who serves. And we talked about being proactive and taking lead and responsibility. And we've talked about compassion and love. And this is something, if we don't mind, if we can end, inshallah, with.
Just remember the issue of forlooking, taghadi. Just forget.
Forgiving and overlooking.
Overlook
That's
it.
another very good
Ignore
point.
it. I didn't hear it. That's very important in the marital life. Very, very essential ingredient.
Meaning forgiving mistakes.
Forgiving mistakes.
Overlooking the faults and the mistakes.
They call it,
maximize the.
they call it the taghaful,
Taghaf.
which is looking the other way.
Allahu Akbar.
So pretend that nothing happened. But how would you find if this feature is in the husband-to-be?
Exactly.
See,
You will test them?
well, actually, this is one of the things you look in. When a proposal comes to your daughter or to your sister, you just don't ask anyone you know around you about him a question or two. You have to scrutinize the person. So you go to his workplace. You ask his relatives. You go to the masjid. When was the last time you saw him fight or raise his voice? How is he? Is he impulsive? Does he have rage attacks?
Temper.
These things break a marriage.
Allah.
And these are the worst thing in a marriage. When someone comes to your daughter and you know that he is impulsive, or the way you're interviewing him, he's snobbish or looking down at you. You want to give your daughter to him? If you go and check at the masjid and they say, no, he always makes problems, he talks against the imam, he does this, he does that, troublemaker, stay away.
That reminds me of a man whom a person came to ask for the marriage of his daughter. And he asked him, did you know what time was the adhan called this morning? He said, no. He said, well, you didn't have the dowry for my daughter. So sorry.
Allah.
So that's true.
A man who's conscious, who's very, very good at the commitment of the deen. He knows his duties towards Allah. And if he doesn't know the duties towards Allah, he would not know the duties towards
He wouldn't
the others.
qualify. This is the basics.
MashaAllah. I want to end, as we're running out of time, with, it was a beautiful statement. I'm not sure it was a scholar or one of our teachers, but he said, he was advising women. He said, marry a man who fears Allah. If he loves you, he'll treat you like a queen. If he doesn't, you'll always have your rights. You'll
He would
never.
not transgress against you.
Allahu Akbar.
That's true.
So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us, inshallah, to be like that. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our sisters to make the right choice, inshallah. And we hope to see you in our next episode. This is your host, Gabe Al-Romani. I'd like to thank our dear respected guests, inshallah. We'll see you again soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Season comes and tonight. Season comes and Season comes and tonight. Season comes and when you're lonely, praise him every day. Say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. God is great. Allahu Akbar.